I'm Mark Turman, Executive Director of Denison Forum, and this is the Denison Forum Podcast. We're glad to have you with us as we think about things that matter. Our goal at Denison Forum is to equip and empower you to think, live, and serve intentionally for the kingdom of God, kind of that Matthew 6:33 experience of seeking first the kingdom of God. And that as we do that together, we will hopefully see God bring about the cultivation of great flourishing communities, both our community and communities where he is already at work and where we might be able to get involved with him in various ways. And so we're going to talk about that today. One of the things that's a big pillar for us in terms of kingdom work is what we sometimes call biblical righteousness. How do we raise up ministry and how do we become servants intentionally that help the world to be a better place, whether we're talking about how we treat immigrants, how we treat the orphan, how we treat the widow, how we treat the alien. The Bible has a lot to say about that, Jesus and other places in the Bible. How do we share the gospel and share it creatively and intentionally? How can we meet physical needs so that we have the opportunity to also meet spiritual need? We want to try to bring all of those things together. And our conversation today is going to help to do that in many ways. Many years ago, my pastor preached a sermon I've never forgotten based on Matthew 25. And he said in that sermon that what we get to do is we get to do little things that help little people that we ought to do with little thought of reward. That when we're doing that, as Jesus said, you're doing it unto the least of these and you're doing it unto me, that his presence is very, very much connected to the least and the last and the lost people in our world. His heart is for those people as it is for all of us, and that we want to focus on that in an incredible and specific way. So we want to help you to do that in various ways. We've highlighted and will continue to highlight people and ministries that are making a difference in all kinds of places and in all kinds of avenues so that God might lead you to serve in one of these ways intentionally. And so today we are going to talk with the president of Children's Relief International. And let me just plug a couple of times through this conversation where you can find that on the internet, learn more about them. It's simply childrensrelief.org. And Jason, if I don't get it right, please tell me, childrensrelief.org. And today we are talking with the president of this organization, Jason Pieratt, the president. If I don't get your name right, Jason, I apologize. I've been practicing, but we're glad to have you with us. Jason is kind of a dual citizen of the world, if you might say. He grew up in both Iowa and in Brazil, which to me as a Texan, that's basically like two foreign countries. But Iowa and Brazil, the son of missionaries, and started his working career as an elementary school teacher, which is a mission field that maybe he can give us some insight into. He traveled as a young person with Children's Relief International, and that started to stir in him a sense of calling that maybe he can unpack as well. But ultimately, that led to him becoming a full-time servant with CRI in 2010. Jason also holds a master's degree in Cross-Cultural Ministries from Dallas Theological Seminary and is also the holder of a Doctor of Intercultural Studies from Western Seminary, lives in the Dallas area, as I do, and we have some mutual friends. But we're going to share a little bit about what Children's Relief International is all about. So, Jason, welcome to the Denison Forum Podcast. Tell me anything I got wrong or left out that you want us to know.
Oh, that was great. We're kind of Yankees, so we say our last name Pieratt. Okay. I like to say Pieratt. It's spelled Pieratt, so I get it. No, we say Pieratt, but not a big deal.
Well, I was going to say Pieratt because the first part of it looks like a pier, like out in the lake, right. A pier.
Yeah. I used to tell my students it's pie like a pie and rat like a rat, like it's how you spell it. Purr like a kitten and rotten like an apple. Pieratt.
Okay.
So,
well, I have to confess, I'm from East Texas, so it could come out in all kinds of ways.
I married a Texan, and that poor girl, she's had to deal with that ever since she married me. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about how this ministry of Children's Relief International, where did it come from? How long has it been around? What's the what's the origin story?
Yeah, great. I'm blessed with one of those stories that involves my family. So my parents founded Children's Relief International 25 years ago this year. And it started, mom and dad were students at Liberty University back in 1975. And dad tells the story. He had a professor that said the need for missions was great. And he told it in a way it was, he said, imagine people carrying a log, and 95 of the people, 100 people, 95 of them are carrying this side of the log and 5 are carrying that side of the log. 95% represents the amount of pastors working in America, and the 5 represents how many people around the world globally are sharing the gospel and sharing Christ. And dad heard that, and the guy ended it with, which side are you going to pick? And then he read 1 Corinthians 15:34, where it basically says, some men have no knowledge of God, and I say that to your shame. And to my father, that was like, okay, this is the first time he heard the Great Commission. And he was like, this is it. We're gonna lean into missions and ministry. And so they took the challenge, and years later, took our family to Brazil to be a seminary professor and run a Christian publishing house. And it was while mom and dad were in Brazil that they were exposed to the depths of deep poverty, really deep poverty amongst the street kids of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And so dad and mom started to feel like, we want to do something to help these kids, but found the experience of trying to help them to be so far away from where they were and what they knew about the culture and the language. I mean, they learned Portuguese, but the language was difficult. The kids have kind of their own language even. And so they didn't know what to do. And the Lord happened to have dad bump into a young man named João, who had grown up on the streets of Brazil himself and had become a Christian and was in his early 20s. And he was trying to find a way to help these kids too. And so they came together and prayed and formed a ministry to the kids that actually worked, that actually took root, because João was leading it and dad was encouraging and strengthening João in kind of a discipleship and financial kind of way. And so from that experience, I think that ministry is still running today, actually. And from that experience, they returned home on furlough and said, hey, I think we want to try to help more children in deep poverty around the world. What would that look like? And from that, Children's Relief International was born in the year 2000. And so they started their first partnership in Mozambique, Africa. And we're still working there.
So you kind of grew up breathing the air of missions and particularly CRI from your earliest days. Is that?
Well, I would say, I was in my 20s. So they moved us to Brazil when I was a teenager. Don't necessarily recommend doing that. But we had a real strong. I was in Brazil about almost 5 years, 4.5 years. Mom and dad were there 10 years, and I had no interest in being a missionary, no interest in my career, as a teacher, and I was going to help on the side, but I wasn't going to do this full time. And I took my first trip with Children's Relief International in 2002, just as it was like the first team into Mozambique, and brought some friends and tried to help the babies, tried to help the kids, So that was kind of my first experience with CRI.
And tell me, you were how old when you took that first trip?
It was like 22, about 22, 22, 23, 22. 22 years old. I've been teaching for 2 years as part of a local church, and went and had that experience. And if you want to hear part of my story, it's not necessarily CRI's story, but that trip changed everything for me.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, you hear this story fairly common in church life of somebody that grows up in a pastor's home or grows up in some kind of a ministry context. They're like, oh, that's great. I'm glad my parents or my grandparents are doing it. I don't want to do that full time. Tell us a little bit more what happened on that trip.
That's great. Sure. So that trip, I wanted to go see what mom and dad were doing in Africa. Of course, you have the summers off. And I love kids. I always knew from a very young age, I knew I wanted to help kids somehow. So I wanted to go there and help those kids. And my faith, I wouldn't say my faith was super strong at the time as a believer. I was a Christian, but I was a pretty lukewarm Christian. And so it was much about the adventure as it was serving. And like the second day we were on that trip, we walked into a hospital and to serve and pray and help some kids there. And I just happened to witness a little baby girl die right in front of me. A little malnourished, starving little baby. Mom was there the missionary we were with, our partner, Noemia, it was a unique moment.
Right.
And that experience immediately was like, what am I looking at here? What is going on in this part of the world that babies are dying? And the little baby story was malnutrition combined with some local witchcraft care had basically bled the baby out. And so at that point, the seed was planted of like, well, who are you, Jason, to these kids, and who are you going to be, and how might you be used? And of course, my internal conversation was, I want to be a superintendent someday and make plenty of money, and I'll do this on the summers. I'll do this some other time.
Yeah.
So
and God's had some other ideas.
2 years of that, 2 years of wrestling with that. I went back the second year and for a month. The first year I was there a month. The second year I was there for six weeks. That one was a little harder. That one was I wasn't sure I was going to be able to help, or we were doing much help. But it took a supernatural experience I even struggle to still kind of tell it, but basically a supernatural experience of a dark demonic force telling me, Jason, you can't change. You're never going to change. I own you and you can't change. And this happened on an evening at a retreat that I'd gone to with my church. And during worship, I'd had kind of a thought, or not a better word, an impression of many hard things I'd done in my life. And I'm like, why am I seeing this? I'm forgiven. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I said, Lord, you got to show me what to do with it. And the counselor said, I don't know what's happening. I was pretty scared. And then I said, went to my room, started praying, reading my Bible. And that's when that demon came in and said, I own you and you can't change. And it terrified me. And I was terrified for about a year and prayed for a year that God would help me understand what that meant. And at the end of that year, on a run, back then I used to run a lot, it was like a light went on, and it was, Jason, you're lukewarm, and you're going to have to pick one or the other. You know about these babies. You know about the children. You know my word. I grew up in the word. You know what I want you to do. And you can say no, and you can say no, or you can say yes, but you can't do what you're doing. I can say that now. Back then it wasn't that clear. And it laid me low, and I said yes. And I heard him say, will you take care of my weakest children? Will you take care of them? And so at that point I said yes, and left my job and started raising support. So anyways, that was a little more than I planned to share, but
no, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Cause it just resonates so deeply. And especially with, just how God gets our attention when maybe we're least expecting it. Yeah. And, in some ways, getting involved in what God's doing in the world is both, an incredible adventure, as you said, but also sometimes risky, while he may be asking us to be a part of what he wants to do in some place and through us, he always has things he wants to do in us at the same time. Absolutely. And those things tend to run on parallel tracks in many ways. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that for sure. It can be a little dangerous to get near what God is doing. It can rock your world. It'll rock your world.
I don't recommend doing it that way. I would recommend listening.
Listening and listening earlier.
Reading and listening. Don't wrestle. I don't recommend it, but I'm so thankful for it and for the way God's been merciful in my life.
Yeah. Well, you'll hear us as you listen in this conversation. You'll hear us refer to Children's Relief International as CRI. That just makes it a little bit easier in some ways. But Jason, help us to get our mind and heart around what the core work and the heart of what y'all are doing. People go to the website, they can see that there's like 6 or 7 kind of main buckets or priorities. Kind of explain the core mission and passion that y'all have.
Yeah, great. Well, our mission statement is to share the light of Christ with the poor of our time in word and deed. And it's rooted in the heart behind that is Jesus's words and Moses's words. They both say, the poor will always be with you. In their own way, they will say, the poor, and very similar to your introduction, Matthew 25, the poor are here and you're responsible to take care of it. So the poor will always be with you. So open your hands freely and give. And part of giving is service, right? And give. Right. So that's a foundational principle for us is we're called to share the light of Christ with the poor of our time. So we really historically have focused on the bottom billion parts of the world, like places like Mozambique, which is in the top 5 and has been forever, just deep, deep poverty, and get behind local partners or local pastors or in some cases, these folks aren't necessarily from that location, but know the culture, know the language from that part of the world, and kind of get behind their vision and their understanding of what can actually help in both word being the gospel, word is the gospel, teaching, discipleship, local church, and then the deed is the care. Basically, it's all the practical ways and compassionate ways you can help someone who's in deep poverty. And so we use the acronym CARE as a way to describe our work. You'll see that on the website. Yeah. So, that's part of the heart. We want to help the poor. We want to help people help the poor. So and we'll kind of get that into in a minute, but we're both a missionary enabling organization and an aid and relief organization. So we're kind of both.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you probably have confronted this question at times, but I got the privilege of pastoring churches for 35 years. Yeah. And we had a number of different efforts that we made in every one of those churches to be involved both locally, regionally, and globally. Mm-hmm. Many people who listen to our podcast are either pastors or church leaders in some capacity. I suspect many of them serve on committees and they're passionate about various things, including mission work. What would you say if somebody says, well, why do you feel like we needed another mission agency as a relief organization, a sending organization? What's unique about y'all's approach to international relief and sharing of the gospel that, might be happening in other organizations in similar ways, but what would you say is distinct about y'all?
Yeah, it's good. It's great. I would say that there's an enormous amount of need, especially amongst the poor of our time. And so if you put them all together, all the organizations and all the churches that are doing international missions, and you squeezed it and something came out of it, it's just a drop that actually ended up helping. So one reason to exist is because the need is there and you can exist and you're going to do good. So in that sense, I don't think there's nothing super, super unique about how that distinguishes us from others per se, because other people are doing an awesome work in an awesome way. If you think about CRI though, and the way we do it, one thing that makes us distinct is we're both missionaries, sending, enabling and sending, and aid and relief, which is not a lot. Some people are just missionaries and some organizations are just aid and relief, right? Not very many staff, very efficient. All the money is going to serve, they pay some salaries. Other organizations are just missionary enabling. They don't really get behind the missionary to fund the programs. The missionaries kind of involved in doing that. We combine the two. So I raised my support to be the president of the organization, top down, and I'm raising funds for all the programs. So that's a unique thing. There's not too many out there like that. But it works well. It works well. And it's worked for 25 years, and we think it's a strong way to do it. Another distinctive then is that for about our organization is we have a very strong, you wouldn't know this unless you get into it, but very strong prayer culture. We believe in the power of prayer, and we believe in it so much that it's part of almost our charism. We pray every single day, 5 days a week as a staff from 8:30 to 9, using a mode of prayer that we call the send prayer, which is a combination of liturgical prayer and then petitions and intercession on behalf of the partners and ourselves, and thanksgiving and gratitude and all that. So every day, anybody who's in the building, anybody who's around the country, you're on staff. Most of our partners around the world are invited, but the time frame is so wide that we don't necessarily, that doesn't always happen. But we pin that down. Missionaries tend to be entrepreneurial and kind of squirrely. It's hard to pin them down, to do one thing. And in our organization, we believe in the power of prayer so much that we pray every single day in a very structured and faithful way. So that's another distinctive. And I think the third one would be probably we use the term living bridges and or long-term commitments. We understand a lot of models out there, wonderful models, and they're totally appropriate, which is to set a goal to eventually leave, to work yourself out of a job. Isn't that kind of the missionary model? You got to work yourself out of a job. Totally agree with that part of it for the most part. Our commitments to our partners in the places in the world that we work, we found are more fruitful when we make long-term commitments. We're not trying to achieve and leave. We are going to make a long-term commitment partly because the poverty is so deep that you could work somewhere for 25 years and not get 3 blocks and making a difference, but there's another 10 blocks that still need help. Why would we leave?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
We don't want to create dependency. We don't want to create all the negative things that can happen from not having an exit strategy. So we say we commit for the long haul, but we revisit our goals and our commitments to each other very, very often. And we know what our no's are, and we know when to identify a problem and address it, and all that. So we stay for the long haul. And the living bridge analogy is there's a lot of bridges and mission agencies that use bridges. I like to use the word living, the idea or the concept of the living bridge, which really comes from a National Geographic show I watched about the state of Meghalaya. I don't know if you've seen that one. The state of Meghalaya in northern India is the wettest part of the world. And it's full of these huge valleys. And there's these tribal villages and communities there that had to navigate that land for centuries. And so they learned to coax vines together to make these living bridges that go over the valleys. And they come together. And it withstands the deluge of this rain. But no metal man-made structure could probably withstand it, I don't think. They haven't done it yet.
Right. Yeah.
So I love it because it's like a living bridge for CRI is the missionary, the home office, all of us here. It's the donor that's making all this work that we can't do it without the donor. Can't do it without your prayers. Can't do it without your money. And then it's the missionary partner on the field and the poor that we're reaching. And we all twist and turn together. And we can span culture. We can span geography. And we can withstand the deluge of poverty. Because poverty, we call those the giants. The giants of poverty are horrible. And they can just wear you out and run you over. And so this bridge can withstand that. So long-term commitments is that living bridge. It takes generations to build a living bridge. And that's what we're hoping to do here.
What a great metaphor and a great picture of what it's like to span these deep valleys of poverty and brokenness and in many ways desperation. So we're talking today with Jason Pieratt and learning more about his work with Children's Relief International. We're going to step aside here for a moment, take a break, and let him catch his breath and let you catch your breath. And we'll be right back in just a second.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by everything going on in our world today? Yeah, us too. Hi, I'm Connor Jones.
And I'm Micah Tomasella, and we're 2 young millennial dads and longtime friends navigating the never-ending stream of news, politics, sports, entertainment, pop culture, and technology. Each week, we dive into the stories that matter, from the latest TV shows, movies, and celebrity buzz to trending topics in politics, sports, and tech. If it's making waves, we're probably talking about it.
So join us every Thursday on Culture Brief, the newest Denison Forum podcast, where we break down the week's biggest stories from a Christian perspective. Expect laughs, insights, and a bit of everything in between. Whether we're informed or still figuring things out, we're here to bring you entertainment, encouragement, and to apply biblical discernment to the culture around us.
So tune in and catch up with us weekly. It's time to make sense of it all together. Don't forget to hit follow so you never miss a new episode.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Denison Forum podcast. We've just launched the Summer of Transformation, a crucial opportunity to help more believers think biblically about the cultural and spiritual issues shaping today's headlines. And right now, you can make an even greater impact. Every gift is doubled through a $100,000 matching grant, but the match hasn't been met yet. That means your gift today goes twice as far to provide biblical perspective through podcasts like this, the daily article email, and more. Please visit denisonforum.org/transform25 to give while your gift can still be matched. Again, that's denisonforum.org/transform25. Our aim is to reach a $650,000 goal by July 11th, and your generosity can help us get there faster. Thanks for standing for God's truth and love during this summer of transformation. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're continuing to talk about Children's Relief International with Jason. Jason, I heard a great quote from another friend of mine. His name is Steve Besner. He's a pastor down in the Houston area. Also teaches with Truett Seminary at Baylor University, which is dear to my heart in many ways. Anyway, Steve gave this great quote today. He said, "Sometimes I joke about what I would do if I had one day left to live. I might eat a lot of junk food, go crazy, have my favorite sport, that type of thing." And then he says, "Today it hit me. Jesus knew, and he chose to wash feet." That's a great way of thinking about how to live your life intentionally and with some sense of good urgency. Let me ask you about some of the needs. You mentioned as we started about going on a mission trip where you saw this little baby that passed away in a hospital setting in your midst. That was very meaningful and powerful in terms of how God got your attention. I've read a couple of books in the last few years that people have said, we've done some amazing work around the world. All cultures have around, at least somewhere around 75 or 80 years. We've done a lot to push abject poverty away. There's a researcher from Sweden named Hans Rosling who said, with a little bit more effort, we could eliminate the worst levels of poverty. Then I heard another writer talk about this recently who said, well, yeah, we've done a great job in many ways of feeding the world in a much more substantial way, but there are at least 7 million people today who don't have enough to eat. What are some of the needs that y'all have witnessed and are working on that are really some of the most difficult and desperate kinds of needs?
Yeah. So I think for me, watching babies come to mind. There are a lot of malnourished babies around the world, especially where we work. And with just a little bit of help, you can keep them alive. But if they don't have the help, they're gone. They're gone too fast. So we have a very strong baby nutrition program that we have 4 locations. We're doing it now. So I would say medical and nutrition for children, not just food, but good food. There's lots of chips around the world now. There's lots of junk food reaching parts of the world that I've not seen over my 15 years. So they're getting food, but it's junk food. So having good nutrition and then food in general, I think too, just a little bit of food. In Malawi, there's a hungry season every year almost now. Since we've been helping there for 5 years now, every year there's been a hurricane or a crisis, and these families, they live off the food. They live off their crops. There's no crops. So there's no food. And they're literally feeding their kids one day a week, one time a day, maybe a little more than that. Parents love their kids. No matter how poor you are, you love your kids. So you give your kids everything. But just a little bit of help with food can go a long way. And there's been a lot of advancement in there. But there's, when you jump from $2 a day to $4 a day, it is a jump, but it's still only $4 a day. It isn't that big of a jump, like some of those books, it isn't that big of a jump. So I'd say nutrition and food. I'd say shelter. I met a mom. I was in Malawi. Again, I'm talking about Malawi while I was just there this winter. And there's her house laying on the ground in a mud pile because of the last hurricane or typhoon that went through there. And she's got a little mud brick hole thing that her and her 4 kids are living in. And that's it. And then they're, I don't know how they all fit. They're pretty big little kids. So shelter is a really big deal. If you can provide shelter, and we have a ministry that's been helping with shelter, and we've seen that you give a gift of a home that will last a lifetime, you see the whole thing rise. The whole community starts to rise just a little bit. And even just a little bit goes a long way. So food, nutrition, shelter, education, always education. I got so many stories about helping kids get through elementary and then get through high school. And now we're seeing, because after 25 years, we've seen handfuls and handfuls of some of these kids that get good enough grades to get into university or a book tech, and you can get them through. Then they get out and they have a job. They know Jesus, they have a job, and then they start to help their families and their communities, and it starts to lift. So education, don't ever reduce, if you can, the impact and power of a sponsorship that's helping a child get an education, because it really does change everything.
I know with your background as a teacher, this must be really powerful. Is there a story of a person, of a child that you think of when you think of, wow, this is a success story? This is what it looks like when you empower a young person with educational opportunity, and it lifts their life, lifts their family. Is there a story that stands out that you remember?
Yeah, which one? Which one should I tell?
Well, you pick.
Can I? Yeah. There's a really hard one that's not just. So there's a story of Damali, who is who because we have a partner who loves the children on the mountains in the western mountains of Uganda, and we met him, and his passion was to help these girls not become child brides. So it's very traditional over there for these families to marry off these little girls, 12, 13-year-old girls, and they sell them to these old men in the village to basically be able to take care of the rest of their family. Now, whether in Damali's case, her dad was a wicked man and her mom was distant. But I've met fathers who aren't wicked who just have to do this. I think they have to do that. So Reverend Cooley, who's there, he says, "Hey, family, if we can keep your daughter in a boarding school, so she's in a boarding school, getting education, getting food, will you not sell her, please? Please." And it worked. He said, "If you'll help me with Damali was one of the first ones we helped. So we got Damali off the mountain into a boarding school. She was able to get through 3 years of high school, had good enough grades that she is now in her second year of nursing school, which is just pennies on the dollar compared to here. Like, you put a girl through nursing school for a couple $1,000s, and then she's gonna make an income, make a living, be exposed to the gospel, and be exposed to the light of Christ. I believe she's a Christian, but sometimes you don't know if they're Christians yet or not. But it doesn't, like, in that part for me, like, we just got to keep talking about it and keep showing up. Just keep showing up and be Jesus, and then see what happens with these girls. So Damali's story is from a child bride to a nurse that loves Jesus and is going to help her community someday and maybe pull more out. And so we have 13 girls like that we've committed to help year after year, assuming the donors will keep helping us to keep out. He has 100 girls he wants us to help. We don't have enough capacity as an organization to do that just yet, Lord willing. So her story is really cool. That's a really cool one. I have 2 daughters and 5 nieces, and I can't even begin to imagine that situation, you know?
I have a daughter and a granddaughter, and just to think about
if we can't put her in school, she's a bride. She's married to a man who already has 3 wives. You know? Wow. That's pretty cool story.
Just amazing to be able to make an intervention like that. You mentioned just obviously sharing the gospel with her and with others. There's sometimes this unnecessary tension between physical need and spiritual need, sharing the gospel and helping people to have shelter and food and clothes and medicine. Talk about how those weave together in the work of CRI and how y'all do that dance, how you look for creative ways to share the gospel, how you disciple people who respond to the gospel. What does that look like in the context of your ministry?
Yeah. So because of our model, which is to follow the leadership and the vision of our partners, they're all of them are very embedded in their community and have basically a reputation that is Christocentric. So they are Christians working in the community, and everything that comes out of there is about the God. So if it's compassion, it's compassion with the gospel. If it's the word, it's always combined with some sort of care for the poor. So if they're doing a lesson or a discipleship program, they're asking, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Can we help with some food or whatever?" So it just weaves hand in hand. As far as creative ways of doing it, and there's I don't know that I can think of what's one good example of a creative way of doing it. We do these green door homes, and when they give a gift of a home, they first talk to the family, tell them who Jesus is and why this gift is happening in the first place, from a Christian here in the U.S. supporting this effort. They don't have to be Christians to get a home necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
And then they meet with them throughout the process to disciple, to evangelize and encourage and strengthen and continue to say, "This is because of Jesus. Do you want to know more about Jesus?" And we hope that seeds are planted from that. And then in the end, we dedicate it. So
why do you call it a green door house?
Yeah, that's an interesting name. The couple that was helping us in in Mozambique that started it wanted to call it Green Door because of the new creation. Green has a Genesis and a new creation, and here's a new opportunity for you to have a start over experience with this gift from God, and He loves you, and this is starting new. So it just kind of stuck.
Yeah. Okay.
It points
to
great creation and opportunity and God's grace and love in our lives and in His provision, and it just stuck.
Yeah, that's great idea. So you mentioned earlier about having a real strong commitment to kind of work yourself out of a job in a particular place. That seems to point in the direction of investing in local leaders, raising up local leaders. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like in the model that you follow. Does that mean you're church planting? Does it mean you're coming in and working with existing churches to try to implant the resources and the help that you're giving? How does that work from the standpoint of raising up local leaders who can carry on the ministry after you're gone?
Yes. So again, each of our partners has its own vision for what they're trying to do, and almost all of them are pastors, and all of them are connected to their local church or are leading a local church. And right. So in Malawi right now, rising up local leaders looks like discipleship programs through the church, training them in doctrine, which is one of the bigger needs too, by the way, in the poor, is teaching the word and really teaching the word in a way that they can understand it and not have these variances. So discipleship programs in India, it looks like a group of 35 pastors that we're supporting in a network in a deep forest area and getting behind them. And most of them are young men. Some are old, some are young. The young men are rising up. The old men are working with them, and they're going to take over as these older guys have to retire and take down. In right. Myanmar with Leon, it looks like sending people that are part of his community that he raised up in his school to Bible school, and some of them are going to come back and serve with him when they're done with school and they're ready to help. So it's lots of different ways. Actually, it's always there though. These guys are disciple makers, and so it's just what weaved into what we do and how we do it. So it's like really you want to get into the weeds. For each one of our partners, it's like 13 different small businesses is one way to have that has its own model of being excellent in their community about creating disciples and about creating evangelists and moving on and sharing. I don't know that you work your way out of a job eventually because we all go see the King or the King comes home, right? So they were doing a job. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So part of what you do includes sponsorship. That's one of the ways that people can intentionally become involved. They can obviously travel with you as a part of the ministry. They can become a part of some of the travel mission trips that you are planning in various places around the world. They can find out all about that on the website. But you're obviously not the only Christian relief and mission organization that has a sponsorship model. But why do you think that is a good tool? And what does it look like to sponsor either a child or a pastor, one of these entrepreneurial individuals that you've been referencing? What does that relationship look like if somebody goes from this podcast and they look at your website, they want to become more involved, they're interested in a sponsorship of some kind? How does that kind of work, and what does it look like?
Yeah, great. So if we're kind of believe in like concrete and personal. Concrete being very, very transparent and very personal. So if you sign up to sponsor a child, or if you sponsor a Bible student, or if you sponsor a pastor, or you sponsor an activist that helps the widows, you're going to get at least 4 touch points from us about that relationship with that person a year. So the bio of them, you're going to be invited to send them letters and a picture of your family. All the ways that sponsorships do it, like. We're not doing anything new here, but we want a concrete and personal relationship between you and that ministry and that person, depending on what you're helping. And so you're going to be invited in and shown how to do all that with us. And then, over time, we hope that you get the chance to go and visit the person you're helping, the child you're helping, or the activista, or the pastor. Come and see them and meet them, give them a hug, pray with them. That door's open. So our sponsorships range monthly from anywhere from $25 to $40, kind of that normal range of what you see in sponsorships right now. So we try to be really, really personal, being as much as we can be, let you in and see it all, the warts and everything. So and all of that is introduced on the website and can get our folks to plug into that if they so choose. Jason, let me ask you if
you could talk to you when you were 22, 24 years old, and some of the things that you talked about earlier on, and kind of where you were, having a sense now looking back on that of being a lukewarm believer in some ways. If somebody's listening to this podcast by whatever means God chooses to get it into their ears, and something starts to move in them about wanting to make an impact both locally and globally, what would you say to them as a good way to get started? In your case, it was you decided kind of for adventure reasons to go on this initial trip when you were 22. What would you say to that person of, hey, put your foot in the water and see what God does?
Yeah. I would say put your foot in the water. There's a ton of awesome organizations out there, like CRI, doing really good work. And if you're thinking about it, if you're just playing with the idea of doing it, just take the next step and learn more about what's available to you. Do the research. We can do research today better than any other time in history. Do your research, learn about the organization, find something that makes your heart skip a beat a little bit. Even if it is adventure. Adventure is not bad. Adventure's Bible's full of adventure, and if you feel God's asking you to do it, if you feel the sense of man, if I was just willing to let go of that, I would argue God is asking you to consider to being willing to let go of that. Don't ignore it. Don't think God doesn't care. He cares about you, and he cares what he's asking you to do. And he wants you to be faithful in taking a step. And it's just a step. You don't have to commit. Just take the first step of learning about it. Find something you like. Talk to that organization or that church and see how they respond to you. See if they are going to interact with you in a way that you need to be able to be faithful in this step. Because again, there's a lot of folks out there that do it differently, and someone's going to talk to you and invite you in a way that's going to make your heart beat a little bit, and then pay attention to that, and then lean in, volunteer a little bit, go on a trip. You don't have to go overseas to start this stuff. Take a little step towards it. Whatever that invitation might be, and then see where it goes, and then keep leaning in, and don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. A sense that God might have you do more, because I believe he would have you do more.
Yeah. So be curious. Yeah. I love that idea of be curious, and, look for and listen for those things that God will use to make your heart beat faster.
Yeah. Right? That's right. And I'd say this, when that happened to me at 22, for whatever reason, I don't think I was this smart, but I was praying that the Lord might give me, make me a man after his own heart. That was a prayer that was on my mind as a young man. I want to be a man after my own heart, which is a dangerous prayer if you don't want to be changed.
Yeah.
So you might have a little courage and maybe pray that a little bit too. Lord, increase my faith. Lord, make me a man after your own heart, and see if you can't find yourself in a new spot. And
as somebody said years ago, I never forgot it. Tell me, keep your eyes and ears open for what it is that makes you cry and what it is that makes you sing. And God can work through either of those pathways, right?
No doubt.
So as the leader of Children's Relief International, this is 25 years of ministry and leading this organization. What are you hoping for as you look forward for CRI? As you think about what the needs are, as you understand them right now, what are you anticipating? What are you excited about over the next few years as you celebrate your silver anniversary in ministry?
Well, I'm just so thankful for the 25 years the Lord's used CRI and allowed us to be on mission, and all the unspoken, unknown heroes that are part of this, the people that helped Damali that nobody's ever going to know. That's not something that CRI is made up 25 years of people doing that kind of praying and that kind of helping. And I love it, and I'm thankful for it. And as I think about the future, I have the privilege of taking a founders organization and taking over, and I'm the son. So my hope is that over the next 25 years that we can help create CRI to be a 100-year organization, which is a big goal. It's a big goal, which would mean, more missionaries coming on board, more of God's people engaging in prayer with us, as a praying community and being known as an organization that prays and invites people in to pray for the poor and to pray for missions and to pray for God's heart, and then more of the poor reached. I think with what's happening with AI and all these things, the gaps are going to grow, and there's going to be a deeper need and a deeper poverty is not going to get better. It's going to get worse in the hill country. The hill country is going to get worse. And I think on this side of things, people are going to be looking for meaning and looking for purpose. And some of them are going to find it in Jesus Christ. And some of them are going to find it in serving on mission and being part of a mission agency like Children's Relief International. And I want to be ready for that. I want our organization to be ready to invite people in to serve and share the light of Christ with the poor of our time all over the world. In our own backyard, this first time in our history, we're starting to do some local things. We're testing a homeless ministry care evangelism in Iowa. We've done a little disaster relief. So I think the Lord's opening that up. It always felt a little bit like mission drift for us to say, we're helping the bottom billion. There's already people helping here. Why do we need to do that? And for whatever reason, I feel like the Lord's saying, hey, you know what? You should help your neighbor. If you can, you should. What are you going to do? Yeah. And so maybe some of that too. I'm super excited. We got some of the hardest jobs in the world. Lots of people are distracted. The giants of poverty are horrible monsters that'll lay people low. And the hill country's steep. But we trust the Lord, and the Lord's with us. And so I always say we have the best jobs in the world.
Yeah. God goes before us in all those things. He's not intimidated, even though we are sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best job in the world.
Jason, thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you and to get to know your story as well as the story of CRI. And folks, if you're interested in knowing more, you can find Children's Relief at childrensrelief.org on the web and learn about them. Some great tools of information and sharing and how you can plug in, and you can follow up, connect them directly, contact them and learn more. Find a way to pray for them, find a way to support them financially, find a way to go and be a part of what they're doing personally. We want to help you to find trustworthy pathways that you can be confident that you can step into and be a servant along with the Spirit of God. And maybe for you, for your family, maybe for your church, helping your pastor to find places where your church can engage and have an opportunity to make a difference. And this one we would recommend to you highly, Children's Relief International, childrensrelief.org. Thanks for listening to our conversation. We hope it's been helpful to you. Please rate, review us on your podcast platform, share it with others so they can be a part of the conversation. And we'll see you next time on the Denison Forum podcast. God bless you. Every month, hundreds of thousands of people read and listen to Denison Forum's daily article, podcast, articles, and books. Did you know that in the last 12 months, the Denison Forum podcast has been downloaded over 100,000 times? Each one of those numbers represents a life, and we are so thrilled to be a part of helping so many navigate today's confusing culture with faith and confidence. If you've been impacted by Denison Forum, we'd love to hear your story. Visit denisonforum.org/testimony to tell us about how Denison Forum has impacted your faith or family. That's denisonforum.org/testimony, or just click the link in the show notes.